Alright, so it hasn't even been a week, but I want to talk about some recent animation news. Now, again, I can't guarantee that this is going to be a series or a weekly, bi-weekly kind of thing. Just when I feel like it and whenever I have the chance to talk about these kinds of things. So, one of the big stories that came about this week, and certainly kind of a controversial one, was the announcement that the Frozen special, Olaf's Frozen Adventure, originally intended to be an ABC TV special, has been bumped up to theatrical status. It's going to be attached to Pixar's next animated picture, Coco, the original story they're doing about the Day of the Dead, which is opening November 22nd. Now, this announcement has thrown a lot of people off, and it definitely caught me by surprise. A 20-minute, or 21-minute, I should say, Walt Disney Animation Studios featurette playing before a Pixar film. This was quite unorthodox, although it really isn't, because back in 2008, when Bolt came to theaters, a couple weeks into its run, Disney for some reason decided to attach the Pixar short Tokyo Mater to the beginning of the movie. When Tokyo Mater came out, the Cars Toon series was unveiled, and they started showing up on the Disney Channel, and I think on ABC as well, or maybe some other Disney-owned network. And you could tell that the Tokyo Mater short was intended for theaters because it's pretty beefed up. It has a really huge set compared to the other sets of the Mater Tall Tales, because the other ones, you know, there was like a neighborhood, it was like a firefighter scenario, and there was another one where he was like I guess he was an ambulance or something. But with Tokyo, you know, they had a huge set, you know, a huge city. And I think a lot of that was ported over to Cars 2, or it was like a test short to see how big they could make the city in Cars 2. Long story short, Tokyo Mater was attached to Bolt a couple weeks into its theatrical run. I don't know if it was done to boost the film, because Bolt opened, well, not so well at the box office, and they thought that attaching a Cars short to it, because Cars Mania was still kind of in full swing by the end of 2008. That's when the series peaked as a merchandising monster and reached $5 billion in sales. So perhaps the intention was to help Bolt at the box office, because for some reason they didn't attach the Walt Disney Animation Studios short Galagos Guest to Bolt. That was completed in 2008, and for some reason Disney has never released it outside of the few showings it has enjoyed at film festivals. It was a little switcheroo, the opposite, back in 2008, a Pixar short before a Walt Disney Animation Studios picture. So this has also raised a lot of questions. A featurette, 20 minutes, 21 minutes long. Are people going to come into the theater and think that they walked into the wrong movie? Well, if Disney marketing in the next trailer or the next poster for Coco emphasizes that there's going to be a Frozen special before it, people will know beforehand. And I guess, you know, people working at box office, such as myself, because I work the box office at my local movie theater, you know, you can tell them, you can tell the customers, just so you know, there's a 20-minute Frozen special before the movie starts. So I think if Disney marketing, you know, informs audiences, general audiences about this, I don't think there will be much of a problem, because Disney used to do this sort of thing. There was a time when Disney used to attach featurettes, as they call them, films that are a little too long to be short films, but films that are not long enough to be feature-length films. Featurettes. Disney attached featurettes to movies, both live action and animated. I think one of the earliest examples of this was the 1960 short film Goliath II. Goliath II, if you've never heard of it, is a Disney animated short film about a kid elephant who's like pint-sized. And his father disowns him because of it, but his mother loves him, and, you know, it's got a little bit of Dumbo in it, and oddly enough, it feels a lot like The Jungle Book, even though it was made 7 years before The Jungle Book's release. And the score sounds, it's almost like a prototype Jungle Book, and that's really, really interesting in a way. Like, the music sounds similar, the art direction's kind of similar, and even some of the animation from Goliath II was recycled and retraced into the elephant scenes from The Jungle Book. I think it's in The Jungle Book. I think it's pretty interesting how those two shorts are kind of linked like that. But yes, Goliath II was a roughly 20-minute featurette, and it was attached to the live-action Disney movie Toby Tyler, or 10 Weeks with the Circus. I don't think anybody remembers Toby Tyler except those who saw it when it came out, and I don't think too many people remember the short Goliath II unless they owned a VHS tape that it was on. I think it's on the Cartoon Classics volume, How the Best Was Won. But it was one of those featurettes. 6 years later, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree was released in theaters with the live-action Disney comedy, The Ugly Dachshund. 2 years later, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and both of these were around 25 minutes in length respectively, that was attached to The Horse in the Gray Flannel Suit. And then Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2 was attached to the island at the top of the world. Attached to Disney movies, of course. They weren't attached to anyone else, any other movies, just Disney releases. And then there was Winnie the Pooh and A Day for Eeyore. That was attached to the 1983 re-release of The Sword and the Stone. That was the film's second re-release. And The Rescuers was re-released in 1983 as well, and before The Rescuers was the 25-minute Mickey's Christmas Carol. So that was like a tradition for Disney. And then lastly, when The Rescuers Down Under came out in 1990, it was preceded by The Prince and the Pauper, also over 20 minutes long. There was even a 10-minute intermission between The Prince and the Pauper and The Rescuers Down Under, a 10-minute, 10-second intermission. And it was obviously, and I remember reading like one of the reviews for The Rescuers Down Under that was published when the movie first came out, and it was complaining about the intermission. It's an obvious shill for the concession stand. And yeah, it was. I wonder if they'll do the intermission thing with this, with Olaf's Frozen Adventure and Coco. I wonder if there'll be an intermission of sorts, a 5-minute intermission, a 10-minute intermission. The Toy Story 1 and 2 re-release that happened in 2009, that had a 10-minute intermission, and that was peppered with fun facts about the movie, and as I said on my blog, it had fun facts, it had stuff that was on the bonus features, and it even had some of the Toy Story treats. If you've never seen the Toy Story treats, they were these little short films that were shown on ABC. I think it was part of the One Saturday Morning block of cartoons, and they were made around the time the movie was first released on VHS and Laserdisc. So that was a good way to pad out 10 minutes and to give people time to breathe in between both movies. I wish Disney would do a double feature like that again with other movies. And then there's another question that's being asked: is Disney not confident in Coco? Coco is one of two Pixar movies coming out this year. The other one obviously being Cars 3. And it's opening during the Thanksgiving week. Now, let's go back to 2015. The same thing happened. There was a Pixar movie in the summer, that was Inside Out, and there was a Pixar movie released during the autumn, during the Thanksgiving week, The Good Dinosaur. As we all know, The Good Dinosaur is the only Pixar film that has lost money at the box office. Quote-unquote, a flop. And some are worried, or some are suggesting that Disney marketing fears that Coco is going to perform like The Good Dinosaur. I don't know, I'm sensing a lot more confidence behind this feature than whatever they did for Good Dinosaur. Honestly, guys, I thought Good Dinosaur had a very ho-hum marketing campaign. Like, I liked the trailers for the movie, but the trailers obviously didn't work. The trailers obviously didn't get audiences interested in seeing the movie. And my philosophy is, most movies fail at the box office because no one really wants to see them to begin with. If you can't entice them with the trailer, if you don't give them an incentive to see it beforehand, they're gonna skip it. Less and less people go to movie theaters, by the year. Each year goes by, people go to the movies less and less. It costs a fortune. And for a family movie, like a Pixar movie, it costs an even bigger fortune because you got to get the tickets for maybe mom, dad, maybe grandma, grandpa, and then, of course, your kids. Then you got to spend another $50 to $60 on concessions. I know this because I work in a movie theater. It's a fortune. An animated picture with a budget the size of The Good Dinosaur, somewhere around $200 million, you gotta really market that thing. You really gotta get people interested in seeing your film, because if you don't, that opening weekend number comes in and all the press vultures are like, flop, 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 flop. So, is Disney afraid that Pixar's new original movie is going to fall like this? Do they think that this Day of the Dead tale is gonna have a hard time taking off? Well, there is one thing that I will ask. Will the Day of the Dead theme translate to other countries around the world? Like, will other countries respond to this movie? Because Day of the Dead, of course, as we all know, is a Mexican holiday, and a lot of us Americans know it, but I don't want to assume, which is why I'm asking you, the viewer, if you're from a European country or a country in Asia, how well known is Day of the Dead over in your place? Like, is it really well known? Do you think the movie will have a hard time in your country, or in Europe, or Asia, or anywhere else? That's a question I myself can't answer, as I don't want to generalize. But I can definitely see the worldwide box office being a concern, and because Frozen exploded domestically and worldwide, maybe Disney thinks that attaching a Frozen thing to Coco will boost its numbers. And I honestly think that the live-action remake of Cinderella opened as big as it did because of Frozen Fever, because if it weren't for Frozen Fever, I think that movie would have opened a little more modestly. Frozen Fever came out when Frozen Fever was still in full swing. So, I don't know if it's really in full swing now. I think Frozen still has some prominence. I think the wait times for the ride at Epcot are still ridiculously long. I don't know, because on my last trip, which was a week ago, I didn't really go to the World Showcase. I was more interested in focusing on attractions I've never been on before, so I didn't really do the World Showcase this time around, but maybe the next trip I will. And I really also have no interest in going on the Frozen ride anyways. But, it might be a quality attraction. I myself have been frozened out. I saw the movie opening day and I had issues with it back then. It's not a case of me turning against it because of the hype. I mean, Inside Out and Zootopia got considerable levels of hype, and it didn't drain my love for both of those movies. But Frozen was a movie I had problems with since day one, and the hype only just made it worse, because, you're going around, you're hearing people calling it the greatest animated movie ever made, the best Disney animated movie in decades, the greatest Disney animated movie in the universe. It was so progressive, it was so subversive, and I was like, no. I've actually never seen Frozen Fever because of this. I don't really have much of a desire to watch it, but, I'm sure it's a cute little short. I've heard mixed things about it. And, I'm good. I'll stake it out. Some people are telling me, like some of my followers on Twitter, they're telling me, you know what, I'm going to pay for my ticket for Coco, and I'm going to wait outside the theater till the Frozen thing's over. I'm just going to sit in there and I'm going to stick it out. And because I want to review it too, I want to say what I think of it. And who knows, I may end up liking it. So, aside from the possible reasons why Disney is attaching this to Pixar's new original movie, what did I think of the trailer for Olaf's Frozen Adventure? Well, I really don't have any feelings whatsoever. I mean, there were some funny bits here and there, and, it was just the typical, Olaf bounciness, and a new song, and something hinting at Anna and Elsa's relationship, and it just seemed kinda, cash grabby. You could kind of tell that it was meant for TV, that it was meant for ABC special. It kind of has that quasi-theatrical quality, kind of doesn't. On the whole, I really don't have much of an opinion on it. I'm just interested in the decisions that are being made. Attaching a 20-minute featurette to the newest Pixar movie. What that could mean for the Pixar movie, or what that could mean for featurettes. I don't think this is going to signal a comeback for featurettes by any means. I mean, there are some people, when short films are playing in theaters, they wonder, is this the right movie? Is this the right movie? I mean, if people get impatient during a short, imagine what a featurette will do. And I think one of my commenters pointed that out, people do get impatient during shorts. Like, where's the actual movie? Where's the actual movie? It may seem like a novel concept, but cartoons being before movies, all kinds, was a big deal. MGM live-action movies were preceded by cartoons. Tom and Jerry, Tex Avery, all their one-shots. Warner Brothers cartoons were Warner Brothers cartoons were played before all of Warner Brothers movies, including all the gangster movies. It's probably hard for a lot of people my age to process the idea of, like a Looney Tunes cartoon being shown before a Warner Brothers gangster picture, because, well, ever since the 60s, Americans have been conditioned to think that animation is just a kiddie thing, and animation in the past was just for kids or wasn't important. But no, in reality, all those great cartoons, the Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, all those great cartoons, Woody Woodpecker, those were all shown before big live-action pictures, and audiences loved them. The cartoon was like the cherry on top when you went to the movies. You got to go see a good movie, and you got to see a really funny cartoon before the movie as well. Nowadays, that just seems like a novel concept, something like a bygone pleasure. And it's only kept alive through animated movies. Disney animated movies are preceded by Disney animated shorts, like Paperman and Feast and Inner Workings, and Pixar's films are normally preceded by Pixar-made short films. And sometimes various Disney releases will be preceded by Pixar shorts, like Muppets. Muppets Most Wanted had Party Central attached to it. That was the Monsters University short. And the first Muppets movie, the reboot Muppets, that had the Toy Story tune Small Fry attached to it. So, and there have been some instances where an animated short will be before a live-action Disney movie, like before National Treasure 2, they had How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, the Goofy short. And that was the only thing I remembered about National Treasure 2. I couldn't tell you what happened in National Treasure 2 outside of maybe one or two things. The only thing I really remember from that night, back in December 2007 or maybe January 2008, the only thing I can remember from the night I saw it, National Treasure 2, was the Goofy cartoon being before the movie and the Wall-E trailer. Other than that, I barely remember National Treasure 2. I barely remember the first National Treasure. So this is one of those things that I can just take or leave, this Olaf's Frozen Adventure short. It just seems like, just another way to keep the franchise alive and in the public eye until Frozen 2 comes out Thanksgiving 2019. And if it boosts Coco's grosses, I honestly can't complain. Even without the short, I still think that Coco would still do well, because I think the marketing is doing a better job at selling the picture than the Good Dinosaurs marketing did. I always thought, I really think that the Good Dinosaurs marketing campaign was a real lame duck campaign. I just thought it sucked. In fact, it was the trailers that were released overseas that interested me in the movie, that got me more interested in the movie. Like, the American trailers only just focused on pretty imagery and some of the dinosaurs, and whereas the other trailers, they kind of dived into the weird world that Pixar created with the Good Dinosaur. That the dinosaurs were farmers, and that the cowboys of the dinosaur, and that the T-Rexes were cowboys, and that the apatosaurs were farmers, and they had these really screwy-looking chickens on their farm, and that was stuff that fascinated me, and that was only in the foreign trailers. They were not in the U.S. trailers at all, and that frustrated me. It's like, you should be showing that stuff in the U.S. trailers. It's like they were hiding the hidden weirdness of that movie. And I think that's what threw a lot of people off when they actually saw it. They were going in expecting this dinosaur movie, just a straightforward dinosaur movie, and what they got was a Western with dinosaurs. Whereas with Coco, it looks much more straightforward. This is a world. This is our take on the land of the dead. It's like a giant factory. It's like a giant factory. It's a mechanical world. It has a lot of things going on. It's world building, like Inside Out and Monsters. And Monsters Inc. Those kinds of Pixar films. So I think the marketing is doing a better job selling the movie than the marketing for The Good Dinosaur did for its respective movie. So I don't know if attaching the Frozen short to it indicates that Disney is not confident in Coco, in Pixar's new original. Only time will tell. And once again, there's more disappointing news on the DreamWorks front concerning the movie Shadows. As many animation fans know, Shadows originally began life as a project called Me and My Shadow. Me and My Shadow was going to be this meshing of computer animation and hand-drawn animation. It was going to be about how our shadows live in a shadow world and work there. And they're assigned to, different people, and they have to stay with those people. So the movie was going to be about a shadow who was stuck with this guy who was afraid to leave his own house. And the shadow decides to break off from him, and that caused all this commotion in the shadow world and in the real world. It sounded so great, but like many animated projects of this ilk, it got canceled. DreamWorks put it on the shelf after Rise of the Guardians had flopped at the box office, and then they canceled it outright a couple years later, only to recook it into a movie called Shadows. And that was going to be directed by Edgar Wright, the auteur director who directed the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, the director of this year's Baby Driver, and also the director of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And Edgar Wright is known for his unique style and that he's one of those auteur directors. So it was a big deal. It was very exciting to see DreamWorks pick him up, even though the project had transitioned from 2D CG hybrid to just all CG film. And then there were rumors stating that it was going to be a live-action CGI hybrid, which added more insult to injury. But now Edgar Wright is off the project. He said, well, I wrote 3 drafts of that movie, but because of the whole regime change there, most of the people that hired me and David Walliams to do it don't work there anymore. So at the moment, that's not something I'm necessarily attached to. I think it's something that's to be determined. Of course, we all know what happened with DreamWorks. Comcast bought the company, and of course, everything changed. A lot of projects got canceled. The Croods 2, Larrikins, still bitter about that. And apparently this one might be on the chopping block, and it's not surprising because it seems like Universal and Christofaria's version of DreamWorks is going to be a very play-it-safe kind of DreamWorks. Although I don't want to assume too much because they still have things like The Wizards of Once on the docket, but that could be gaslit or torpedoed any moment now. So I don't know what DreamWorks' future is going to be like. It seems very fishy, and so I'm not surprised that Edgar Wright's iteration of the Shadow Project is on the chopping block. Who knows, they might just remake Shadows into a Minions-like kind of movie, because, you know, Universal, NBC, Comcast, Universal, they also own Illumination Entertainment, and that's a studio I've been very critical of lately, so who knows if DreamWorks is going to be Illuminationized, you know, Minionized under Christofaria and Universal's watch. So that's just another bit of unfortunate news concerning DreamWorks. Next up, the trailer for Blue Sky's Christmas 2017 picture, Ferdinand, has shown up. And I quite liked the teaser for Ferdinand. I thought the teaser was, you know, very atmospheric, you know, pretty quiet. It seemed like it was teasing a very old-school family movie, and it was going to be a pretty faithful adaptation of the original book. The new trailer, on the other hand, makes it look like a silly, cartoony romp. And to me, you know, there's something buried in that trailer. You could kind of tell that they want to go for this emotional story about a bull who's been separated from his family farm, and that he's not into bullfighting, you know, he's into peace and happiness, and he's being forced into this world that he, you know, doesn't want to be a part of. I like that little stuff in the trailer, you know, it hints at a much better movie, and there's also a new poster for the movie where he's with the little girl on the farm, and, you know, it's a very nice poster, but you watch that trailer, and it looks like Ice Age, but in Spain, with Ferdinand the Bull. And, you know, there are some parts in the trailer that are kind of funny towards the end. Like, I liked all the stuff with the Great Escape, you know, I liked all the stuff where Ferdinand and his animal friends are trying to escape. No, that's some good stuff, like when he's sneaking through the window and then he falls onto the car and sets off the alarm. You know, that's good slapstick-like stuff. I like that stuff. The stuff I didn't like was the more, you know, the more verbal comedy, like the bit with the stallions on the other side of the fence making fun of Ferdinand. And I think it's more because of the way the trailer is edited. Like, maybe there's a scene in the finished movie where Ferdinand meets the horses and the horses pick on him, and that's why they're making fun of him in that part in the trailer. Like, maybe he encountered them earlier. When it's presented without context in the middle of the trailer, and this is something that American animated movie trailers often do, and it bugs the living daylights out of me, it makes it seem like the movie is going to be this stupid romp where animals are saying stupid things. It's kind of like how, and I mentioned this on my blog, in the Wreck-It Ralph trailer, you know, there's a whole spot dedicated to the hero's duty joke, and that was really just one little scene. It was just one lame joke out of 100 great ones. You know, it was a great script, and that was just like one moment where it tripped up a bit. I mean, for a comedy, to me, no comedy sticks the landing with every single joke. There's always going to be that one joke that's a groaner, even in the best animated comedies, you know, like the Toy Stories, you know, the best Pixars, and even some of the DreamWorks comedies. You know, there's always that one line or two that, you know, I kind of just cringe at. It's just like, what? Really? So maybe that's the case with the Ferdinand trailer. It's just that the trailer was very chaotic, but I'm used to this. I'm used to this kind of thing. I'm used to trailers for animated movies making movies look like they're chaotic and that they're on a caffeine rush, and maybe Ferdinand is actually a quieter movie with some, you know, frenetic parts sprinkled throughout. Not that the whole movie itself is frenetic, not like it's The Croods, where it's like, every 5 seconds. But yeah, even though I was pretty disappointed with the trailer itself, I'm still interested in the movie because, again, there's sheds of something interesting there in that trailer, and I'm used to trailers misrepresenting movies all the time, especially animated movies. I'm used to trailers making them look so stupid and so bouncy and so, you know, so shallow, but then the movie comes out and it's actually okay. One of the animated movies that really cemented that for me was Tangled. I remember I was dreading that movie, and if you've been following me for years on my blog or elsewhere, you'll know that I always point to this trailer as a great example of movie marketing. Tangled's trailers, both the US teaser that played before Toy Story 3 and the full trailer, both of those trailers, especially the teaser, just didn't do it for me. The teaser made me sink in my seat like, oh no. You know, after The Princess and the Frog, Disney is going 10 steps backward, and they're making this Shrek-esque, you know, early 2000s DreamWorks style feature where it's just snarky and it's got attitude and it tries to modernize everything. It's like, oh no, what are you doing, Disney? What are you doing, Disney? You know, you had such a good, you know, you have such a good lineup behind you. Meet the Robinsons, Bolt, Princess and the Frog, and now you're gonna go backwards into Michael Eisner eraville with this movie, and I was so worried. But then I had heard reports, you know, test screenings, you know, they had test screenings at the studio, and they came back very positive, and you know, early reactions are saying it's actually really good and it's very classic. You know, it's not Shrek-esque at all, and that's just the trailers misrepresenting the movies. So about a month before Tangled came out in the United States, the film's Japanese trailer came out. So I decided to check out the Japanese trailer. I was blown away. I was like, holy crap, this movie looks like really epic and emotional, and it looks like it's just going to be really, really good. And it turned out to be true. Tangled is a very good movie. Great, even. Initially, when I first saw Tangled, I thought it was good, but not great, but then on repeat viewings, it got better. Yeah, I always point to the teaser for Tangled and even the trailer, you know, all that best day ever, you know, she's been grounded for like ever, you know, it just felt like a teeny bopper version of Rapunzel. And we all of us animation fans knew that Tangled, you know, early on, Disney under Eisner was going to make this movie called Rapunzel Unbraided. And Glenn Keane was going to direct that, and Glenn Keane was even supposed to direct Tangled until he stepped down from the project. He was with the project since the day it was going to be the Shrek wannabe, and after Eisner got the boot, Lasseter made sure that Rapunzel Unbraided was recooked into something more classical, more sincere, and less cynical and hip, you know, that kind of thing. And thankfully, Tangled turned out to be a very classic style fairy tale movie. It's very possible that Ferdinand will be surprisingly very good, and that all that stuff in the trailers is just, you know, stuff. You know, it's just the trailers edited to get other people interested. You know, throw funny animals at them, throw animals doing funny things and saying stupid things at them, and that's what gets them interested. I mean, it works for the Minions. Why not Ferdinand?